So let's talk about what's inside the box. The calibration certification. This comes standard with every LLG7. The Surface Pro 4 also comes standard with the device. We have the video camera, which will be mounted onto the windshield. Power adapters, nice sloppy cable work. And of course, the calibration plate. Now the heart of the matter, the LLG7. So we have two foam blocks set for mounting the LLG7. High density foam. Power cable. For powering up the unit. And of course, the LLG7. So let's talk about the SQUID mount. The box, or the container we're using, is actually a pressurized and airtight storage case with laser cut foam. Inside the SQUID mount box, we're going to find 6-inch mounting vacuum cups with pump and release technology. Moving on to the 10-inch. 10-inch are a little hardier with the built-in alarm. Each unit comes standard with 2 10-inch and 4 6-inch vacuum mounts. So let's move on to the knuckles. The knuckles, basically the main function for mounting the vacuum cups with the steel rods. The steel rods will actually come in a variety of sizes and can be cut to size. Last but not least, actually it's not the last thing, is the safety harness strap, mounted to the 10-inch to reduce secondary impacts. We also include the wrench and screws for mounting onto the 10-inch, the safety strap actually. These are not suction cups. Suction cups are something you lick and put on glass. Vacuum mounts are actually incredibly durable, and there's a whole different process of mounting these on a vehicle than a suction cup. First thing you have to think about, these are protective covers. Protective covers must always be in place when these are not in use. Here's why. When first removing, I want you to bend the mount softly and take the vacuum mount from the cover. If you get any cracks, any damage to the outside rim or the vacuum mount itself, these are going to need to be replaced. So make sure you're very careful with these. You're not washing this with harsh chemicals like Windex and 401. Basically just water and a damp rag. You're going to wipe this clean to ensure that there's not any dirt on it. Now let's talk about how this actually works. Unlike suction cups, we are pumping out the air out of the unit through the rear vent. This little white piece of fabric here is where the air is extracted when mounting. So I'm going to actually demonstrate what it looks like on the vehicle first and how simple this will actually mount. Once you press the vacuum mount against the vehicle or the side of the vehicle, you're simply going to pump until the red line is no longer visible. The red line is a safety to let you know that air has been incorporated into the vacuum mount. So let's demonstrate. This is a full seal. It's actually not going to go anywhere. Let me demonstrate what it looks like when we have some air leakage in here. Just by opening up a little bit, you'll see that the valve popped open. This is still very firm. It's not going to fall off the vehicle. This is just indicating to you that the seal on the door may not be that great. So this is a 6-inch. Now I'm going to remove it. Removing a 6-inch is very simple. You peel back and remove. When placing this back in the box, you're going to put the cover back on carefully and place it in the box. The 10-inch. This is a very, very hardy form of the vacuum mount. Instead of a 6-inch, we have the 10-inch. Both the 6-inch and the 10-inch are concave surfaces. You can buy these as flat vacuum mounts. The problem with that is flat vacuum mounts will have a difficult time forming on imperfections or curvatures on a door. The concave vacuum mounts will actually meet these concaves without any issue. So there is a difference with the type of vacuum mount that you purchase. Let's go over the 10-inch. 10-inch is capable of holding 175 pounds of weight and also has a hardy bracket for mounting a safety strap, which we'll be showing you later. And the pump is a little bit different on this one. It still has the valve for you to pump the air out through this, but it also has an alarm, an audible alarm when there's a leakage. Let's say you mount it on the bad part of the door and then it starts to leak. You'll hear an audible sound indicating that it's got leakage. So let me show you what this looks like on the door now. This takes a little bit more force, but once it's there, it's set. Now, when removing this, it's going to be a little bit different. You're just not going to be able to peel this away. Before moving on to your next vacuum mount, you always want to check out the seam around this. Once in a while, a little bit of the seam can be bent in and you just flick it out with your finger. If it starts to leak, you know you got a problem. So to release the 10-inch from the door, it's not as simple as just scraping it like this. You can't actually do that, it's so tight. There's a valve underneath here that you actually have to find and push. Holding the valve until all the air is brought back into it. You can actually hear the air enter the vacuum mount. And then, carefully remove. And that's how we remove the 10-inch. First thing we need to talk about is the actual mounting high-density foam brackets. These are actually used every time we're setting up the unit and taking the unit down. Let me demonstrate. We first set the foam blocks in the mounting position near the door. The LLG7 is placed on top of the mounting blocks. This is exactly 7 inches from the ground or from the surface. So let's talk about mounting the LLG7. Now when we're mounting the LLG7, we're not going to set this up flat against the vehicle as you see here. We actually need to offset the front of the LLG7 from the back. So when I have it sitting here, the first thing I'm going to do is move it out a little bit. The reason why we have this type of angle set is when you're driving down the road and you're actually doing readings using the LLG7, we don't want to have to drive over the edge line in this example. You want to be able to drive in the lane of the vehicle with the unit shooting the laser out front onto the line. So that's why we have an offset of the vehicle. And there are some measurements that we'll make to do this. So let's talk about mounting the LLG7 now. We talked a little bit about the vacuum mounts. Now the knuckles. The knuckles actually have to be attached to each post. And let me demonstrate. The long stem will be placed over the studs. Make sure you don't put these on upside down. Putting these on upside down will actually eliminate the ability to turn the knob, okay? So let's put these on first. You may note that I'm doing 5 of them. The reason why I'm doing 5 is because we're going to install 4 6-inch vacuum mounts and 1 10-inch mount. When we flip this over to the other side of the vehicle, we're going to have to reverse the entire mounting system because this is going to spin around. I also want to have you pay attention to this. Check this out. Notice that I have the knuckles all facing in. Sometimes I may have to mount a rod on the outside. The problem with that, when I mount rods on the outside, it takes away the strength from it being mounted on the inside. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. The unit may be moving a little bit. So if you can, make sure you keep the knuckles facing in. Some applications you're not going to be able to help. Once we have these in place, we're actually not tightening them down, not at all. They're still going to be very loose because we don't want this to be torqued while we're mounting the system. So let's talk about the rods. We have a variety of rods, and I would say you could probably cut these to any size you want. So using a pipe cutter, you're going to cut the rod to the desired length for your mount. I don't like to have excessive rods coming out of the knuckle hanging down the road. I like it to be nice and clean. So you can simply cut these to order. We have an array of sizes in the box, as you can see here. So let's get started. The 6-inch is always my first mount. I mount the 10-inch last in this area. I try to do the 4 10s in succession of each other, and then the 10-inch here. We also want to be careful how we're mounting those. We don't want to mount 6 inches over door seams or on other doors. We actually want to try to keep everything in one area, keeping this close to the vehicle and keeping it tight. So, the first thing we have to do is make sure that the unit is offset from the vehicle. Sometimes I have to use a bar and another knuckle. Let me show you why. If I need distance, I'm actually going to have to spread this out a little bit to give me room. But adding 2 knuckles will actually give me a little more flexibility, which I do not want. So I'm trying to make this a very tight fit. So in this example, especially on the rear, we're going to attempt to make an adjustment. And by the way, the holes on these knuckles go forward or they come back. So if you're leaning them forward, it may be more difficult than having you'll have to actually watch this, but basically, if I mount it like this, it's actually giving me a tighter fit, and the stem is coming straight out. If I mount it in the opposite direction, it goes up, which I do not want. So always have the hole facing towards the vehicle. I'm going to start off with this stem, place it against the vehicle like this. Now, I want the back of the LLG7 as close to the vehicle as possible. About right there. And I want this drop down on the stem, and I want this stem here, the stud, to go all the way through to give it a real nice tight fit. Next, I make adjustments and press against the car. Pumping the vacuum mount. Now this is a nice fit. Notice I keep this loose because if it was tight now, I can torque this entire unit and the level will be off. We want to keep this very level. So this is actually install number 1, vacuum cup number 1. The second one could either be mounted directly, like the first one, if I have enough room. So let's try this out a little bit. I'm going to try this mount. You'll see that it's offset by about 1.5 inches further than the rear, and this is what we want. And I'll go over that again. Now you may not see the stem come through, but it does go through to the hole here, so it's very secure once I lock it down. So this is a pretty good example of how I would install the first 2 10-inch. Next will be a 10-inch using a longer bar. I also use the surface to hold the 6 inches, so I don't have to worry about putting them on the ground and getting them dirty. Look for the next smallest rod, and that'll be this one right here. We don't want a long rod, there's no purpose. I want to keep it down and low. So we're going to use the small rod. First, I'm going to set this in place. I'm going to bring this rod down a little bit further than what I normally would do so I can make adjustments. Next, I take my first knuckle. This will be the first vacuum mount with 2 knuckles to be installed because of the length of the rod. I make sure the hole is lined up to where it will easily be mounted onto the vehicle. So I'll do this. I lower, or actually adjust the knob and bring this up, place it to the vehicle. Now, when you're mounting these, I like to make sure that the vacuum knob or the pressure tab is facing up. All of these should be facing up. So we can look in the rear view mirror of the vehicle or side view mirror of the vehicle and see what's going on while we're driving. So turn this up. Then we're going to lower it a little bit more. And pop it up. Notice I've got the 2 10-inch very close. They're not touching, but they are very close. This is called a tight fit. And then you can adjust the bar a little bit, just like this, just so it won't fall out. You do not want to make it too tight. So that is the third 6-inch. vacuum mount number 4. I'm going to need an identical rod, as you see here. We're going to mount it to the rear of the LLG7. Remember, we don't want to bring these out because that's actually away from the car. Try to mount these knuckles with the knobs all facing in if you can. There have been some installations in which we do need to do that. Torquey rear doors and such. All right, so let's mount vacuum cup number 4. Make sure you're using the same size bar as you did for the third mount, actually. So we're actually going to place it above this one over here, grabbing another knuckle. First thing I do is place it into the knuckle itself, and then I'll make the adjustments. All right, so let's actually get this mounted. Remember, when you're mounting this, the direction of the hole for the knuckle is important. You want it to aim towards the door instead of up. And you'll notice that when you try to put it on. So, this is a good example. Got it right here. Remember to move my vacuum cup or mount facing up. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. They do not have to be identical in height because some of the bars and the way the front and the back of the unit will be, the cups can actually be displaced a little bit on the doors. Your number 1 priority is stability. So I push it in and pump it up. There we go. So I've got the 4 6-inches actually mounted. Before I put the 10-inch into the center of the door, I want to check the distance that I have from the front of the unit and the back of the unit. Measuring tape is a perfect way to do this. So the back of the unit will always be in a little bit further than the front of the device. I measure the tape from the very top plate here to the door in both areas. We have 2.5 inches in the back and almost 5 inches up front. So we really like to try to keep around a 2-to-1 ratio. If you come out too far, the orientation or the geometry will be incorrect and you'll have bad readings. You can also come out too far in which the laser will be beyond the edge line that you're reading. The setup for this side of the vehicle is for edge line readings. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit. This is my adjustment. I'm going to turn the knob in a little bit and just bring it in just a tad. So let's remeasure and see if these adjustments are good. I'm at about 3 1/4 now. About 4 1/2. That's actually really nice. That's about a 1-inch difference. You can play around a little bit by pulling it out and giving you a little more space, but be careful. You do not want to go beyond the edge line when you're doing your readings, or you don't want to mess up the geometry. The maximum angle or orientation off of the vehicle is 5 degrees. We like to keep it at 2 degrees if you're good with math. So before we tighten this down, we have one more mounting vacuum cup to do, and that's the big old 10-inch. Now the 10-inch is a little bit more difficult to mount because you have to push it against the door and pump it. But it's actually going to be mounted the same way as the other system. So first I have to find a bar. I recommend that you do not mount vacuum mounts too high on doors or even on windows. We've seen examples of those. The purpose of the vacuum mount is to secure the LLG7 to the vehicle and to leave it there. So something to think about. The further out you go with the 6-inch vacuum mounts, the more stability you're going to have. If we're too centered in the door for all our mounts, you have softer metal here. The more solid metal will actually be towards the side of the door. For this vehicle, it's actually very solid. This door doesn't matter, but some of the other cheaper American cars, you'll actually see a lot more flexibility, like the Ford F-150, for instance. So, you have to be careful with the doors. So we're going to bring this down. I'm going to bring the bar out and extend it because this is so big, I don't want to scratch the LLG7 when I'm actually setting it up. Okay. All right, so now we're going to mount the 10-inch. This is going to be a little trickier. I'm going to bring this up now. I'm actually going to mount it higher than the 6 inches. Bring it more to the center. You're going to notice that the brackets themselves are going to be torqued. This is where if you had it tight, it would be very difficult to maneuver, so you want to be very careful. Bringing it right there. That's about as good as I can get. Then I'm going to push the vacuum mount in, and it actually holds automatically. It's not like you have to hold this. And then we pump it. That's the 10-inch. It's on, it's not going anywhere. I check the seams for any leakage. Very nice solid. We have these down here. Now I'm actually going to pre-tighten these a little bit. The rule of thumb is start high, go low. So I hit these 3 like this, and then the 2 up front on the bottom, and then the 3 in the back. All right, so this is our first mount for this 300 Chrysler. Okay, so now that we have this mounted, we need to level the unit. Remember, you can use a manual old school level or an app. I actually use an app called Bubble Level. Bubble Level will actually let you know if your unit is true, not literally. So the first thing I do is I place the level on the surface of the LLG7 and I look down at it to see where I'm at. If it's anything beyond 0.3 degrees, not 1 degree, but 0.3 degrees, I have to make adjustments of raising or lowering the bars to level this out. I'll make another adjustment. I'll take a look at this and I'll say, okay, we are here. Then I go back here. So this unit is within specification. You don't have to worry about making adjustments beyond 1 degree for front and back adjustments. So if you put the level on the device and you're tilting it back and forth and you're realizing, okay, so this is what I need to do, remember, this has a built-in auto leveling device. It will adjust front and back. What it can't do is left and right. So we need to make sure that this side of the LLG7 is not any higher than this side. If it's off level, the readings may not be good. So let me take a look here. So Our unit is level. It's within the 0.3 degree tolerance from left to right. But let's say it isn't. What would you do? Simply, if I need to look at the level, I'm like, okay, to bring it down to 0.3, I would tilt it towards me. So that means I would either have to drop this a little bit or raise this a little bit. So I put my foot underneath to make sure that it doesn't drop out from me. And I take the bars and I loosen them up. And in this case, I would drop it down a little. Once I get the proper degree, we're down to 0.1, I tighten it up. Once it's tight, you know you're level. This is a mechanical device. It's not going to move on you. The cups aren't going to slide down. Okay, so let's actually go through tightening these. I want to go all the way across up, all the way across down. I don't want to forget any of these. So let's start here. Woo. All right. The unit is level and it's on. This is your mount, but there's one more step, and that would actually be attaching the safety harness. The safety harness is not designed to keep this unit from falling off. Your biggest concern is you running into something and not paying attention to the road. The safety strap is actually designed to reduce the possibility of secondary impacts. Let's say if you hit a curb or if somebody hits you, we simply want to keep the unit attached to the vehicle even if it's going to be hanging down, and that's actually by using the safety strap. So I'll demonstrate. First thing we do is we're going to place this hook in the door. As much as you can to force tension here. This will actually keep the strap from flapping onto the window while you're driving down the road. So just twist it. Do it one more time. And then I've got to untangle the strap. From here, we have a tight strap. Secure. That's basically it. This bracket is actually screwed into the plate of the 10-inch vacuum mount. We will then add tension, and that's the mounting of your safety strap. The camera is very simple. It's an HD camera, wireless, transmitting a video signal to the LaserLux and being recorded. Simply mount to the windshield. Tighten it in. About center of the windshield. The power adapter plugs right into the back of the unit. It goes in here. And then underneath into a second power adapter. When we get the third green light on the bottom here, this is indicating that the Wi-Fi connection is ready to go with the software of the LLG7. All right, so let's talk about the features on the back of the LLG7. So the data, the map information, the video is actually all stored in this internal component. This is the cover for the internal storage, which is the USB thumb drive. Capable of 64 gigabytes. That's about, under its current settings, 20 hours of video, mapping, and data, all stored on this USB thumb drive. So next I'm going to go over the LED lights. These two red lights will actually work in synchronicity. These are status LED lights. They'll let you know when the unit is powered up, when the Wi-Fi connection is active. So you'll see these on practically all the time. When they're off, the unit is off. Next, the amber or the orange LED light. This indicates that the laser is actually on. The laser is shooting out of the front of the unit. It's actually hitting the pavement, either recording data or in a standby mode. So when you see the yellow amber light, you know that the laser is on. Next will be the manual laser on-off key. We actually include a key in which you can turn the laser off manually if you chose to do so, because it's a federal regulation. Since it is a Class 2 laser, we must have a manual shut-off. But remember, you're not going to have to do that, because the only way to turn the laser on is by having access to the software in the first place. Next, this all the way down here is our external humidity and temperature sensor. This is ambient temperature. So this will actually monitor the temperature and the humidity of the environment, which can have effect on your retroreflectivity. On-off switch. Pushing it in will actually turn the unit on as well as turn it off. Last but not least, this is actually for the power cord. So you're simply going to feed the power cord through your vehicle. No need to hardwire onto your battery. It's a simple cigarette lighter adapter that goes right into your vehicle, and then simply place the plug and lock in place. When closing the door, if you don't have a hole drilled underneath the vehicle, be careful to make sure you do not crimp your power cord. So when I close it, it's basically in place, giving it enough room for the device to go up and down, to self-adjust without taking too much of the cable. Now that we have the power connected, let's turn the unit on. This is the power up mode, so the lights are actually going to stay steady burn for 20 to 25 seconds, and then you will see a series of patterns which will indicate that it is ready for a Wi-Fi connection to the software. Also, when connecting to the software, if you have a breakdown in Wi-Fi signal, if the signal to your Wi-Fi or to the software isn't as strong as you need it to be, if there's some lag in the software, simply open up the antennas on both sides, like antenna ears on a TV. We don't want them down, we don't want them flat, we actually want them pointed out like this. And this will give you a better Wi-Fi signal. The unit is now ready to be hooked up to the software. The tablet, which is a Surface Pro 3 or 4 that you get with your unit, will go into some type of mount. I prefer a RAM mount. They're easy to install and they're removable. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm actually going to go to my browser. Your tablet is pre-programmed for this software. Simply tap on Chrome, and then the software should pop up. And now we're ready to roll. Let me go over the menu real quickly. This is the GPS, coordinates, the environment, your time and temperature, your date, your humidity, and then we've actually got the function buttons, and we'll go over those later. For right now, let's get started doing some readings. I've got it set on white. I'm going to do an edge line since we are attaching the unit to the right side of the vehicle. And simply by hitting this button, I should have some data. All right, now we're actually going to give you an example of doing some readings while driving down I-295 North. You can see our record description, I-295 North. Our file name, we're also naming 295. I've clicked on the edge line on the bottom. This is the type of marking we're going to be reading when we go onto the road. Simply hit the target, and the retroreflectometer is activated. What you're seeing in this chart is the line. So we're actually reading the retroreflectivity of the edge line right now, and while you're driving, you're trying to keep it in the window by not going too far left or too far right. In the middle is actually perfect. We are about 3 feet off of the edge line. We're almost center lane taking readings of the edge line. That's the beauty of this device. Now we're actually going to shift over and do some skip. I click the skip line. And we're going back to edge line because Greg's the driver. So this edge line is really bad. You can see it chipped up and peeled. We're averaging about 69 to 70 millicadella. And this is the average number right here. We're documenting retroreflectivity readings about 1,700 to 1,800 readings per tenth of a mile. And then that's calculated into one reading. So every tenth of a mile is being calculated. We're averaging about, right now, 1,500 readings every tenth of a mile. I'm going to switch over to the center lane. That's actually going to be funny. Okay, so we're going to go center lane, skip. So we're actually hitting some skip lines now. I'm going to adjust over to the right a tad. Right there, that's perfect. So the retroreflectivity is pretty low on this. We're running about 65 on the skip line. To show you what it looks like, I'm actually going to pull up the video. This is actually what you would see while driving down the road. Take a look at the top right. That's the retroreflectivity value right now. It's 71, averaging 66 to 71. And this is the skip line that we're actually doing the readings on. So we're videotaping this entire segment by just looking up here along with the data. Now I'll go back to the menu. Still doing some skip line. We're averaging about 110. We're going to slide over to the edge line again. I just hit that number, and you can see that the edge line is actually going to go up a little bit, I believe. Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, we're at, the average is above the 150 minimum. So when you see the colors, if you see the line turn red, it's a failed, it's below the number. If you see yellow, as you see there, that's a marginal number. That's like not passed, not failed. And then if you see green, those are good markings above the minimum standard. You can make adjustments to just have pass and fail if you'd like as well. Cut it in a little bit. So we're off the line a little bit, you can see. Getting some good numbers here. Now switch to skip. We're also able to inventory the RPMs down below. So this is counting the reflective pavement markers as we go by. It's saving the number every tenth of a mile. So we're actually coming up to some RPMs. Every tenth of a mile we're documenting about 17 RPMs. I'm actually going to zoom in and show you a couple of the features while we're driving along here, documenting some edge line. While you're driving, and let's say you want to notate or make a marking on the map that you're recording, because you are creating map data here, you can actually drop flags or draw lines on the map that's actually going to be created. So we have anything from work zone to wet. So let's say we're driving down the road and we want to document a work zone because there's traffic cones on the edge line. Simply tap on work zone. You can see that the button is highlighted in yellow. This is going to stay on. It's going to stay on yellow. It's actually drawing a line in Google Maps for later to show us how long that work zone is. Once I tap it again, the work zone is off. We've recorded data the entire time, but we want to notate that there was a work zone. These buttons are completely programmable by you. You can change any of these buttons. So if you're not into documenting the type of pavement markings like epoxy or thermoplastic, you can change these buttons around to say virtually anything you want. You can even program these buttons to drop a flag, a single spot on the map, instead of drawing a line. So that's actually the record description buttons. Over here, we have the GPS. The GPS actually has very good accuracy. It's sub-meter accuracy. It's very, very cloudy today, and our accuracy is about 4 meters, which is terrible for today. We actually document the speed of the vehicle, latitude and longitude. On the bottom here, you'll see the ambient temperature and the humidity. This is important, and it's documented in the records because it also can have an effect on the retroreflectivity values. So it can actually help you decide if that was a factor in low numbers or not. So when you're operating the unit, the operator would typically be in the passenger seat. We do have companies that the driver actually operates the unit, but I'm demonstrating it from a passenger seat. So when we're driving down the road and I'm going to actually be operating it, I'll be using the pause button, which is right here. That pauses the laser. The laser is still on, it's just not documenting data. Maybe we're in a traffic jam and we actually don't want to document the data. When I hit it again, you can see that the laser comes back on and we're documenting data. Now if I actually want to start a new file in the system, I would actually hit stop. That turns off the laser, and I would type in a new file name for my records so I could find the data later. So let's turn the laser back on, and let's imagine that I'm switching from edge line to skip line. So I go up to here, and I click skip. The skip line is actually being documented here now. If I were to drive in a lane in which we had two lines, like a double solid or a solid skip, you would actually hit this button here, and the data would show up in both windows. So this unit is capable of documenting the data on 2 lines at one time. Another thing that you should be aware of is the distance, or the DMI, distance measuring instrument, or the way to track the distance in which you're doing a job. Let's say you have a 12-mile job and you don't have mile markers, but you know where that 12-mile job starts. Click on Start and type in 12, enter, see right here, and what direction are we going, north or south, up or down? So if we're going up, it's going to count from 0 to 12 miles on the odometer right here. So once you hit the 12-mile mark, you know you're at the end of your job. Another way of using this feature is by simply typing in the mile marker that you're starting. Let's say we're starting on mile marker 33, and we're going down. This will end well actually it won't end, it'll actually count down from mile marker 33. So this is another way to notate the distance of the job that you're testing. Let me show you another feature. Interval. See the interval right here? This gives you the ability to add, the distance that you're documenting data. So we're going to do 1/10 of a mile, 0.1, enter. So my data is being documented in the Excel or saved every 1/10 of a mile. So as we're driving down the road and collecting anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 readings when we're traveling faster than this, it's only documenting one number at 1/10 of a mile. Better put, it's averaging 1/10 of a mile of readings into one number and moving on. So this is the average number as we're driving, and then it's actually saved at every 1/10 of a mile. Okay, so now that we have this mounted, we need to level the unit. Remember, you can use a manual old school level or an app. I actually use an app called Bubble Level. Bubble Level will actually let you know if your unit is true, not literally. So the first thing I do is I place the level on the surface of the LLG7 and I look down at it to see where I'm at. If it's anything beyond 0.3 degrees, not 1 degree, but 0.3 degrees, I have to make adjustments of raising or lowering the bars to level this out. I'll make another adjustment. I'll take a look at this and I'll say, okay, we are here. Then I go back here. So this unit is within specification. You don't have to worry about making adjustments beyond 1 degree for front and back adjustments. So if you put the level on the device and you're tilting it back and forth and you're realizing, okay, so this is what I need to do, remember, this is a built-in auto leveling device. It will adjust front and back. What it can't do is left and right. So we need to make sure that this side of the LLG7 is not any higher than this side. If it's off level, the readings may not be good. So let me take a look here. So our unit is level. It's within the 0.3 degree tolerance from left to right. But let's say it isn't. What would you do? Simply, if I need to look at the level, I'm like, okay, to bring it down to 0.3, I would tilt it towards me. So that means I would either have to drop this a little bit or raise this a little bit. So I put my foot underneath to make sure that it doesn't drop out from me. And I take the bars and I loosen them up. And in this case, I would drop it down a little. Once I get the proper degree, we're down to 0.1, I tighten it up. Once it's tight, you know your level. This is a mechanical device. It's not going to move on you. The cups aren't going to slide down. Okay, so let's actually go through the tightening these. I want to go all the way across up, all the way across down. I don't want to forget any of these. So let's start here. Woo. All right. The unit is level and it's on. This is your mount. So we're actually going to talk about the auto leveling feature built into the device. So this base plate, once it's mounted to the vehicle, is always going to stay at this height. The box, or the LLG7 itself, is auto adjustable. Remember, when we mount this onto a vehicle, whether it's a high 150, Ford 150, or if you're going to use a Honda Civic. You're always using the 7-inch blocks to determine the height of the mounting. So use these only. So when you're in the home position, they're going to be at 7 inches. Once we activate the unit for auto leveling, the unit will drop to its reading mode. It'll be ready to do readings. You would simply do this right before turning on the laser to take readings of the roadway. So until then, when you're driving around the parking lot or going to the job site, leave it in the home position, which it is in now. So let's make believe for a moment we're driving down the road and we actually are ready to do readings. So I'm in the vehicle, make believe. I click on the auto locate button, and as you can see, the unit is dropping approximately 2.5 inches down to about a 5 1/4 inch or so reading height. As the unit drops, it's being adjusted right now by the floor or the ground here. We have 2 lasers, one in the front, one in the back, that will take this and auto adjust it as we're driving. This is not designed to auto adjust because of imperfections in the road. This is designed to adjust to keep the correct geometry based on differences in the vehicle. Picture large people getting in and out of the vehicle. The suspension is actually going to change. Fuel consumption, air pressure in tires. This compensates for that to keep the proper geometry while driving. And that's basically what it's for. Now let me give you an exaggerated example of how this would adjust. I'm going to place my foot underneath the unit and force the front of the unit to move up. Oops. There you go. So the front of the unit is actually coming up while the rear is actually in place. Now I'm going to move my foot back and it's going to drop back down to the correct height. So this is called the auto level feature built into the LLG7.